Today I'm excited to share one of my favorite and surprisingly effective openings, the Mengarini Gambit, a powerful weapon for white against the popular Sicilian defense. And therefore, you definitely need to be prepared. Here you have an absolutely outrageous idea, advancing the pawn to a 3, followed by advancing the pawn to b4. At first glance, it seems like you are completely violating all of the classical chess principles. You are not developing your pieces, you are not fighting for the center, you are not trying to castle your king, and so on. But to prove that this idea is actually legitimate, even Magnus Carlsen used it once in a World Chess Championship game. And he won. So, it is not completely ridiculous, but it will certainly shock your opponents. In this position, black usually assumes that the whole point of white's odd-looking pawn moved to a 3 is to support an advance with b4. Since developing the knight to c6 is part of their natural opening plan anyway, they often decide to play it immediately, reasoning that it will also discourage or prevent b4. However, white goes ahead and plays b4 regardless, seemingly ignoring the challenge. At first glance, this can make black think they're facing an inexperienced player who is not only making strange moves, but also willingly sacrificing material for no apparent reason. Faced with this, most opponents feel compelled to capture the pawn, and in fact, many believe it would be a mistake not to. If they leave it on the board, white can push it forward to b5, driving away the knight and causing positional problems. The capture, however, plays directly into white's plan, opening the door for rapid pawn advances and swift development that can quickly turn the game in white's favor. After they capture, you respond with pawn to c3, gaining time by attacking the knight. Once the knight retreats, you play pawn to d4. Now the core ideas of this gambit begin to appear. You have two strong pawns in the center, one of which can advance to attack the knight again. Your rook on a 1 becomes active earlier than usual, and your pieces enjoy open lines and diagonals for rapid development. You can already see that this gambit actually has a clear purpose. In a way, it's similar to the Evans gambit. Now what will black do here? Since they know you are likely to play pawn to d5 to chase their knight away again, in the vast majority of cases they respond with pawn to d5 themselves. It's hard to believe that this pawn to d5 move could be problematic. It isn't exactly a mistake, but it places black in such a dangerous situation that even strong, titled players often collapse in just a few moves. Here's the trick. You capture on d5, and after black recaptures, you develop your knight to a 3, continuing your theme of playing moves that look strange but are actually very effective. Yes, this violates classical principles by putting your knight on the edge of the board. A knight on the rim is dim. But here, it's part of a powerful plan. From a 3, the knight jumps to b5, and from there it can leap to c7, delivering a devastating triple fork on black's king, queen, and rook. The problem for black is that even if they spot your plan, it's surprisingly difficult for them to stop it. Looking at the Lichess database statistics, we see that most of black's common replies here, such as pawn to a5, knight to f6, or knight to e6, all lead to bad results for them, often losing quickly. It's quite ironic that after a chain of moves which, on the surface, seem to defy all conventional chess wisdom, white ends up with a position where black is under immense pressure. Even an engine like Stockfish, usually cold, material-driven, and quick to value an extra pawn as a near-decisive advantage, still gives white a positive evaluation here. That in itself says a lot about the underlying strength of the idea. Stockfish's top recommendation for black is the peculiar queen to a 5, a move that abandons normal development principles and sends the queen wandering early. It's almost comical. After facing white's nonsense, the best that black can do is respond with nonsense of their own. Yet in practical play, very few opponents choose this path. Instead, the overwhelming favorite among human players is pawn to a 5, a move that looks perfectly logical in most openings but turns out to be a strategic blunder in the Mengarini Gambit. It fails to address white's central tactical idea, knight to b5, followed by the crushing knight to c7 fork against the king and queen. What appears at first to be a harmless pawn advance actually walks straight into white's prepared trap, a theme that repeats itself in many of the common continuations from this position. If black tries to control the c7 square, one defensive idea is to retreat the queen to d8. While this does block your knight from jumping in immediately, it also gives you the green light to advance your d-pawn, a recurring theme in this gambit. Pushing the pawn forward drives the knight away and increases your attacking momentum. Wherever the knight retreats, your pawn continues to march, and once it reaches d6, the original threat of knight to c7 is back on the table. What's remarkable is how simple this plan is. You just keep advancing, and yet black struggles to find an effective way to stop it. A common defensive try here is knight to e6, covering c7 with a piece. But in the Mengarini Gambit, you shouldn't hesitate to sacrifice the exchange by capturing that knight. After this, your knight still jumps to c7, regaining the rook and winning an extra piece in the process. Even more brutally, if the king steps to d7 instead of allowing you to take the rook, you don't have to bother with material. You can switch to a direct king hunt. A move like queen to a4 instantly puts the monarch in danger. From here, you can relentlessly check and drive the king into a mating net. In fact, after the pawn on d6 is captured, which is often forced, a stunning move like knight to e8 delivers a check from an unexpected angle, continuing the attack with deadly precision. It's hard to think of another opening where you can land a check from a square like e8, deep inside your opponent's territory, right in the middle of their defensive lines. Once that knight check lands, the black king has very few safe options. Any retreat is limited, the knight already controls key escape squares, and you have the added resource of pushing the a-pawn to deliver checks from the flank. If the king tries to step forward to a6, you can calmly bring the light-squared bishop into the attack, delivering another check and forcing the king to continue its uncomfortable march. Moving to e7 doesn't help either, because a move like bishop to a3 nearly ends the game on the spot, often forcing black to give up the queen just to survive a few more moves. With no safe haven behind, the king is driven forward into enemy lines. From here, your plan is remarkably simple. Keep checking and attacking until checkmate is inevitable. A move like queen to c2 keeps the pressure constant, and it's easy to see that the king is walking straight into a mating net. While the sequence may look long when written out, it's effortless to play over the board. There's no complex calculation required. You're simply chasing the king with a series of forcing moves, each one tightening the noose until the checkmate arrives. This is one of the reasons the Mengarini Gambit is so dangerous. It creates positions where the attack plays itself. If the black king ever captures on d6 in this sequence, the game ends almost instantly. You simply recapture, and checkmate follows within a few moves. Realizing this, most opponents try to sidestep by moving the king to e5 instead. From there, the conclusion of the attack is both elegant and memorable. You push the pawn to f4, delivering a check with the pawn itself, a satisfying and unusual sight in such a sharp position. When black captures this pawn, you respond with what appears to be one of the most ordinary developing moves in chess, queen to e4. But here, that normal move isn't about development at all. It's checkmate. It's difficult to think of another mainstream opening where a standard knight to f3 move ends the game outright, and what makes it even more remarkable is that this isn't buried deep in some obscure, impractical sideline. These positions arise from the most common responses to the Mengarini Gambit, meaning that many opponents can walk straight into this exact mating pattern without realizing the danger until it's too late. It's the kind of finish that makes the Gambit so satisfying, a mix of simplicity, creativity, and inevitability, ending the game in a way your opponent will not soon forget. And that's the Mengarini Gambit in action. Unpredictable, aggressive, and deadly effective. Try it in your games, surprise your opponents, and watch how even the most solid defenses can crumble. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more chess secrets. Thanks for watching.